Welcome to the Unique Conversations with Krys podcast, a podcast created to cultivate a place to have unique conversations about self-love, mental health, and the healing journey. A place where I believe that healing happens through storytelling. So thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to you joining the conversation. Today's conversation is with Dr. Monique Thompson. If you have been listening in for a while, I mentioned in my mental health journey that there was one specific therapist who was very honest and frank with me about what it would take for me to heal completely from the mental health state that I was in. Well, this is her, Dr. Monique Thompson. Dr. Thompson has over 22 years of private practice of mental health counseling. She is a mental health expert, author, and speaker. She also wears a hat as a mother and a involved community member. Dr. Thompson holds many hats, and I want her to go through and continue to introduce herself. I am so excited for you to listen in on our conversation. She offers so much insight and knowledge around the areas of mental health. So stay tuned and enjoy our conversation. Today's conversation is with Dr. Monique Thompson. How are you, Dr. Thompson, today?
I'm good. It's a beautiful Saturday.
It is. I'm excited to have you on today. Would you introduce yourself?
And I try to do that, but then I forget. And I don't ever look at my own bio. I'm gonna try, and as we go along, whoever's listening, how y'all doing? It's Dr. Thompson. I am from the South, and I mean, we're family now, so y'all hear my voice. We're family now, and I'm gonna treat you just like family. I mean, don't ask me for stuff. I am originally from Arkansas.
Okay.
I have been in Texas all of my adult life.
Okay.
My birthday is Wednesday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I am happy to be older. I enjoy being older. And let's see, I am a consultant at Perkins School of Theology. I've been there for 22 years.
Okay.
I've been in counseling practice, solo counseling practice for 23 years.
Wow.
I've been an associate faculty member with the University of Phoenix since 2009. So I don't know how many years that is. What's that, like 13 years, something like that?
Yeah.
For a little while, I kept getting in trouble. I grade. I mean, you're in college. I have some expectations. But the last several years, so 2023, 22, 21, and 20, I was nominated Faculty of the Year because I changed my approach to teach everything. So I teach everything from ethics and law and health and human services. I teach a lot of classes for people who are coming into the field of helping professionals for justice involved individuals. So a lot of stuff about the field of corrections. And what else do I do? I have a nonprofit that I'm ending this year. Like, this is our last service year. After September 1, it'll be dissolved. But I started a nonprofit because of my genius daughter. Her nickname, we call her Houdini. Because we don't know how she does. She just lands well. And she calls herself, though, the rose that fights.
Okay.
The youngest one calls herself our firstborn later. And that is a clue to her personality. I've been married to my husband for 21 years, but we've known each other since we were kids. So I got in trouble one time for sneaking out with a boy, and this was the boy. But that's not our love story. Because after that, I stopped messing with that boy. My dad sat me down and he said, I don't know what you're doing, who you're doing, whatever you got going on, but whatever it is you're doing, you better stop it right now. I would come back. I would not actually skip the whole school day. I would come back because I rode a bus to school. I couldn't have no way to get home. I'm in my 50s now. I can be honest about it. The reason I came back to school was because I had no way to get home. So I would get in trouble. But after that, I didn't get in trouble anymore in junior high at all. I don't know where my husband now. I don't even know where he was after that. I don't have any idea. I did not see him until I was living in Dallas.
Okay.
I was in Dallas for graduates. I was done with graduate. I was an intern at that time. I was all the way into my internship. I was running late, so he held an elevator door for me. And on the ride up, I was like, he looks. I think I know. So he recognized me too. But at that time, it was sort of like somebody from your old neighborhood. Hey, who's that? And then he came over for dinner. I'm a Southern cook, and I cooked. He ate all my food, all of
Oh.
it. I had no leftovers. He ate
Oh,
everything.
all of the food, literally.
He literally came over and ate all my food, drank all my wine. I'm serious. So I don't really drink wine. I don't really drink wine. I like other drinks, but I don't really drink wine.
Right.
Every once in a while, I stop drinking altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this thing, your thing was about self care. Like, there's some things I do. One of them, every once in a while, I stop drinking altogether because alcoholism runs in my family. Um,
Mm,
every once in a while, I do a deeper dive into myself. This year, last year, my deeper dive with my husband was into our marriage, like from our anniversary in 2023
mm-hmm.
until our anniversary 2024. We just clocked in, clocked in, go to therapy, go do like focus, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
got to 21 this year. I'm like, 21 is nice. And we were just enjoying it. I was like, we did a lot of work today. He was like, yes, busted our asses to get here. So this year I'm focusing on the influence specifically of my mother,
Mm-hmm.
just become more self-aware of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I need to keep, the things I need to set aside. Your conscious mind is just slow. It's so much slower
Mm-hmm.
than your subconscious mind, and nothing can catch up to your DNA. Nothing. The epigenetics is real. Nothing.
Right.
Your DNA is faster than everything. So if you don't like every once in a while just like literally stop and pick something,
Right.
check in on, then you'll live it. You'll live out the experience. But I don't. I know that I could still become someone with a drinking problem if
You're
I
not being
didn't.
self-aware.
Yeah, I went to Vegas, my little sister's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible story, but in any case, it was during like this period of time where I was abstaining from alcohol. So we in Vegas, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, "You're not gonna drink." I'm like, "Well, alcohol it runs in our family." And she was like, "But it's my birthday." I'm like, "Yeah, but see, I can't."
I can't. I can't. I
I
can't
can't.
partake
This
right
is
now.
my year to not do that. So when I'm in that place, I follow my own rule. It was horrible. She was so pissed off. So,
Oh.
Vegas, what you come to Vegas for? I'm like, I didn't even actually want to come to Vegas. But in any case,
Yeah. It's your birthday. I'm here.
birthday,
So
I'm here. So that's my bio a little bit. That's my personality bio. That's kind of, I
that's
like to do
perfect.
what I want to do. I do not like to do what I don't want to do. I don't even believe in that. And so I change my calendar all the time. I change my hours all the time. As soon as I feel like, I don't think I want to do Thursday afternoons no more. So I just take my calendar.
I
I
want to be you when I grow up.
know I want to be me. I mean, it takes some doing. It
Right.
takes some doing. Like I work from home now. I
Mm-hmm.
go in the office about maybe once or twice a month. And
Mm-hmm.
that's for someone who really that's the only way we're going to do therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that God chose to be merciful with me and let me be this kind of an artist, a therapist, and that He
Mm-hmm.
has now helped me to keep people from like death. So I'm aware that certain things you will die from that, and He helps me to kind of keep a really good working alliance. I don't have everybody isn't always my fan when we
Mm-hmm.
stop working, but you alive. So sometimes so in my mind, I'm like, you pissed off, but you alive. See how?
No, right.
And there's a review out there somewhere. I don't know what where it is, like Facebook or where it is, but there's a review, and I don't know who it's from.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever you are, if you're listening, I would love to just tell you thank you, and you don't have to tell me who you are, but I'm telling you now, thank you. All it says is she saved my life. That's the whole review. It is one sentence,
And I
and
want to start there. I speak and I advocate, and I told my whole story, and they've included a blurb about you and what you told me when I was in the height of my depression, and so I don't know how I've expressed it enough, but I was like, without you being who you are and honest, I don't know where I would be right now today, because you were very straightforward. And me being the type person that I am, I was like, I didn't even know a provider could break up with you. And then I felt like I was being graded, and my personality. Like, if it's not an A, then wait a minute. I can't handle a B or C what's going on? So that quickly woke me up and was like, okay, first of all, she's going to break it off with me because I'm not performing well as a client. And two, she is very honest with me that my score was high enough on that assessment that I think you compared it to someone could be in a catatonic state in the same sense if I were not as resilient as I was. And if I continued on the path, one of the things that I pride myself on is, me being able to love to go to school and learn and do all these things. And I was like, if I continue down the path and she's telling me she's not going to be here to support me, and this is one therapist that I've had that I've actually connected with, that understands me, that teaches me, that explains things to where doesn't mind going down and going down the windy road to explain things why they work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm putting myself at risk of losing some of my brain function. I was like, okay, I have to take heed to her suggestion.
We have two Black men to thank for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The first is Dr. Kevin Perry.
Okay.
The other is Al Merchant.
Okay.
Al Merchant was that's who I was working for when
Mm-hmm.
I was running late for group. I don't think he even knows this happened. Al, if you're listening, I did get to group on time, but I was late to be early. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in my internship, I did a chunk of my internship was working with adult male sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked under a therapist, well respected. Like there's nobody who knows Al who doesn't totally respect his work.
Mm-hmm.
But that like clarity of this is how it has to be
Mm-hmm.
is from watching him do that.
Okay.
I actually was trained in a Freudian approach,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely hands off.
Mm-hmm.
You come to therapy if you want to come to therapy. You don't want to come, you don't. Not quick to diagnose.
Mm-hmm.
Only diagnose if it's absolutely positively necessary. I mean, the whole thing. Al was like, I don't even know where you got all that from, but he taught me. He was very strict with me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
forget being strict. He was very strict with me. I had to get up to speed in forensics, which when you go to school, when you go to grad school to become a therapist, you have certain required classes. One of those required classes is in psychopathology. What you're really learning in psychopathology is how to diagnose all of the different mental illnesses that are in what we call the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Technically, you would have learned about forensics, which is when you see people saying they're criminally insane or they have narcissistic personalities or all those kinds of things. But you're really only learning about them in theory. That population, they walk the earth. They're more represented in criminal populations than in the general population. But mostly you in everyday life, like people like this, I'm like, there's not that many people with narcissistic personality disorder walking the earth. They simply are not well represented, except in certain populations. Well, so we're talking about adult male sex offenders.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
Yes, ate up with it. So
right.
me coming from just regular mental health, I was not prepared for the forensic population, and I was coming from severe mental illness treatment. I had done stuff in the boarding homes, Terrell State Hospital. I
Mm-hmm.
covered the psych ER, all those. I was very well trained in psychiatric emergencies.
Right.
But a forensic population is not necessarily in a psychiatric emergency. In fact,
No.
they're just fine. They're just fine. 'Cause what they're doing is no problem. They're not experiencing disgust,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're aroused by the things that we look at and experience disgust. So
Right.
you cannot join with them and be empathetic with them and connect with them the way you would somebody who's in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my other specialty is adult survivors of sexual trauma. Well, we form a partnership, and I'm very careful about maintaining, equality of power. So we start sessions on time, we end on time. I explain what I do.
Right.
But working with Al, at one point I was so tired after the session. I was like, if I can do this, he said yes. And he finished my sentence for me. He's like, you can do this, you can do anything because
Right.
you won't be afraid to speak up. You know, because sometimes there's that professionalism, like we hold back to kind of a lot. He was like,
Mm.
you, it's like you will be clear. You know, all the things you need to do to actually get somebody from like a danger zone over here to where it's safe. Yep, you'll be able to do that with no problem. And he was right. I only stopped doing that work after I was actually after I came back from giving birth to my firstborn.
Okay.
Um, I came back to group, and and the guys in the group that I was working with were mostly pedophiles. I think there was like one or two who may have had an adult victim, but mostly pedophiles. And I went back to group, and as luck would have it, the first group I make it back to after going to have my baby, there's a new person in group. And in that kind of treatment setting, anytime somebody new comes, everybody has to do what's called their introduction. And in that
Hmm.
introduction, you have to give the full details of what you did. Yes, in excruciating graphic detail. And I was not ready to hear that. I
Mm.
knew I knew everybody's story except the new person.
That would be hard after having a baby.
But I didn't want to hear it. You know, I'm like, I just had this baby. Nobody told me that when you have a baby, you have this flush of just protective emotions. And I mean, you thinking, you know, I would go into the burning building, you know, just
Yeah.
all of that is so you have this all these instincts that are alive, and I didn't have those before. So that's who we have to we have. I'll thank for that. That's history there. Kevin Perry was my high school band director.
Hmm.
And the nonprofit I started talking about, but that didn't finish, I help kids get scholarships for school
Okay.
to the tune of 45 million at this point. 45 million, yes.
Oh wow, that should be celebrated. Like that's a large amount.
I celebrate. I'm done with it, but I'm celebrating it. So I got to retire. So my daughter, when she graduated class of 2020, got 10.5 million in merit scholarship offers from me figuring out the problem. I'm smart. I acknowledge that I'm smart, high
Hmm.
intellect, and if I focus, I can pretty much figure out anything.
Hmm.
And I figured that out. So she graduates with all this money. All along the way, I've been helping kids get money. But now I'm my birthday is Wednesday. I'm old. You can't they can't I got a lot of gray hair.
Hmm.
And I want to not do things. And there's some things I want to do. So
Okay.
in order to, there's an opportunity cost. You cannot you can do anything but not everything.
Right.
So this was my year kind of started last May
Hmm.
because my new year is Memorial Day. So although it's technically 2024, for me, I'm in the last few months of my personal new year.
Right.
So last year in May, I decided that I was done with
Hmm.
the nonprofit because it takes so much of my time and attention, talent,
Hmm.
and I have to retire. So I have to focus my time, attention, talent, thought in that direction so that my retirement looks the way I want it to look.
Right.
So this is how I'm not going to do that. Now, mind you, the knowledge doesn't go anywhere. I have decided that if somebody has my blood in their veins, they will benefit, but the nonprofit is gone. So anybody listening, if you want to find out what to do for your baby, you have until April 20th.
Mm.
Technically until the end of the year, but really you got to April 20th. So, because you, I don't know, if people know you have to actually dissolve a nonprofit. You have to actually close the books, like turn. You have to say it no longer exists to the state.
Right.
Say it no longer. You have to actually say it no longer exists and close everything out. So for me to do all that, I need the whole summer. So having said that, Kevin Perry is where it started. When I was in high school, I went to all white high school, well, majority white high school. He was a black band director. And he was just one of them people that was like, I don't care. You're going to do this, you got to do that. And you kind of
Mm-hmm.
have these unwritten rules when you go to a place that's predominantly another culture, that you
Mm-hmm.
kind of submit yourself to a different role than
Mm-hmm.
you know. And he just was having none of that. So because he insisted, I had pretty much a full ride my freshman year of college. I think my parents paid like $100 something a semester.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because he literally, this was back in the day. He came to my house, picked me up, other kids just piled us out in his little Nissan Sentra,
Mm-hmm.
took us to the college fairs. Hold on, my phone, my battery's up today. Took us to the college fairs and made us go in. Just made us go in and made us walk around and pick up literature, and like, just there was no way to get around doing what he wanted you to do, because your parents said you have to do what he tells you to do. Like, you
Right.
can't do it. So that was really what happened. Is he had access to lots of resources because he obviously had been to college himself. He knew a lot of people, and he just made sure because he was an alpha. People are familiar with that, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because of that, I was a debutante.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge in the city that I come from.
Mm-hmm.
That you're on the front page of the newspaper. It's like this huge thing. And those are the things that I was grateful for as I got older. And I
Mm-hmm.
look back on those, on the way he went about it, as a how to for me on figuring out this whole scholarship thing. So I'm gonna tell whoever's listening, here's two things to just know, because I'm for real retiring on this. So here's two things. There is no limit to accessing scholarship lists, like where the scholarships are. I mean, people got Instagram things with pages and pages and pages of scholarships. None of that helps you because you still have to get this student to actually apply.
Yeah.
It's just like it's plenty of jobs out there, but you have to actually get the
Get the
job.
person. Right.
And just like getting a job, you need strategy, because it doesn't do you any good to get a job as a kindergarten teacher when you're an engineer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
technically, you could take that job, but that didn't even solve a problem. It actually probably created a problem, right?
Right. Right.
Likewise, if your student wants to go to X, Y, and Z school, what good does it get for them to get a full ride scholarship to a different school that doesn't even have the major that they're interested in?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So there, herein is the Kevin Perry part of it, where he was just in my face all the time. He was in my face all the time. He was in my friends' faces all the time. At one point, I was dating this boy. He was bad news. I
Oh,
didn't.
yeah.
I didn't know he was bad news, but my band director somehow knew, and
Yeah.
he called me in his office. I go in the office, and it was set up like some kind of AA intervention. He had all my friends. And he called me in, and I was like, I mean, because he was constantly like, if you did something, you were gonna have to answer. I was like, whatever it is, I ain't did.
Yeah. I didn't do it.
He was like, I want to know about this boy, and I'm like, what boy? He was like, you know what boy? I'm like, what's the problem with him? He was like, and then so my friends got in trouble because it's like, why didn't y'all tell her? Why didn't y'all tell her? Because he was doing stuff he didn't have no business in that life, about that life, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So my band was like, well, your mom and dad, I know your mom and daddy don't know. I know your mom. I was like, I didn't even know.
Oh, wow.
He was
But
like,
it
wait,
sounds like he was just holding you accountable and keeping your
all of us, the
group accountable.
whole thing, child, all of us, all damn. And like, if you were in that situation, if you ever grew up in a situation where you're a kid and things are unfair,
Mm-hmm.
you need somebody like that.
Yeah.
So, easy example, because this is like literally like somebody could go see this. The video of my high school graduation, you'll see that there's 4 speakers. Ridiculous. There's 4 speakers. Every year before, you see there's 1, maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at my high school, you try out to do that. You have to meet certain kind of criteria, but then you can
Mm-hmm.
try out for it. So he made my friend Anissa and I try out for graduation speaker. We were both like, they don't let nobody black do this, right?
Right.
If y'all would stop not up, if somebody would try out, and I'm like, no, it ain't fair. It don't matter if we try out. He was like, well, you trying out this year. So literally he made me write out my speech, then he edited it, and then he made us do it. I'm like, why are we doing all this? They're not gonna let nobody black. So We go and try out. She and I are first and second.
Oh, wow.
Two white students tie for third.
Mm-hmm.
So who's gonna be the speaker? We ended up with four speakers
Hmm.
because they said, well, they tied for third. I'm like, but we're supposed to have two speakers. So
So why not just keep the first and second and
why
then
not keep first and second? What do third place have to do with any of this? They tied for
right,
third.
right.
So four speakers. And he didn't even let us cry about it. It's like he just moved right on. He was like, "You need to
That's
practice.
just how the world works now, that
Go
just kind of
practice
sets
your
you up.
practice and get ready to do your thing." And I was like, "So this ain't it." He was like, not really acknowledging that it was. He did acknowledge it was bad, but
Hmm.
not to the extent of you're a victim.
Right.
Get yourself in there. Homecoming. I was our basketball homecoming queen, but how I got there was ridiculous. There had never been anybody black. Period.
Hmm.
So we kept messing with the boys. We was like, how do y'all keep having an all white homecoming court when all of y'all black? Because they picked the homecoming court. Right.
Hmm.
The year that I was a senior, the guys got together and they all submitted the exact names. So I come in, I had braces on. I come in from a dental appointment and I see these names on the wall. My name is up there. My friend Keisha Robinson's name. I'm like, and I'm looking and going, everybody black. So everybody was black. The whole time was black. I get to class. I was going to trigonometry. I get to trigonometry class, and I can't wait to tell. I'm like, guess what? We're going to the bell rang. We ringing around that corner. Don't you know they had took the whole list down?
Really?
Gone. And immediately we was all like, yeah,
Mm.
you know what? So they made them do it over because they said they cheated. Because they all came together. Okay, that's crazy, right? So fast forward that story. Mr. Perry was like, "So y'all need to figure out what you gonna." I mean, like he just was like, "So y'all need to outsmart." So like when I go do public speaking, a thing that I share all the time is if you're outnumbered and you're outgunned, then you got to outsmart,
Hmm.
and that is what happened. We got together. We agreed we were all gonna vote for the same people because at this point it's a school vote.
Hmm.
And then we went and got our quote unquote, they call them allies. We found the white students who was gonna vote with us. And that was how I actually won. That was how I won, is that we all got together and there was gonna be no splitting the vote. We were like, everybody vote for these right here.
Right. Right.
And we never said find some white people, find some white people. With us. And that was literally what happened. That is what happened. That was in high school. So fast forward to now, part of my bio is that I was vice president of the school board in Little Elm. And I was the first black woman on the school board. And part of what happened while I was there to make history was there was a black man, and he's still on the school board, who ain't advocating for us. And
Oh.
to give more clarity on how he's not advocating for us, this man voted to pull the African American Studies class from the kids. And yeah, so I'm on the school board at this point though, so this ain't going down on my watch. Y'all see what just happened in high school.
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying. We got two black men to thank for some of this. It's Mr. Perry and Al Merchant. So on this one, I'm literally like, I already know what to do. Here's what we're gonna do. And that is what we did. We filled the room with black men. They got on the microphone one after the other doing public comment and confronted the situation. They confronted him because I let everybody know he did it. He did it. He is who did it. And then it's public record too, because that's public record.
When you vote.
So, yeah, it's public record. So then at the end, we had to take a vote because he placed this motion on the table, and
Hmm.
it did not pass. It did not pass. But it was from those early life experiences to learn that when something is completely unfair, you're outnumbered and you're going to have to outsmart.
Right.
You have to outsmart. So that's how I live my life. Outsmart stuff.
Right. And I see how that all steps into who you are and what you've
Mhm.
created between your nonprofit, the way that you run your practice, from all the things that you manage and juggle, which I my mind is blown as to how you handle all those things. But I mean, but outside of being a therapist, that I think that's wonderful. Now you mentioned Black people and the difference and the inequalities. One
Mhm.
of the prior episodes that I did is I read a study, and it rang true for me because it mentioned, and a couple of studies I actually read, that women, of course, they say that women are more predisposed to being having depression.
Mhm.
And out of that population of women, Black women are half as likely to go seek help or
Mhm.
accept help as their counterparts. What reasons do you feel that that occurs? And how can we continue to advocate to dispel some of the stigma behind seeking help for your mental health?
So there's three factors
Okay.
I would say factor in.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, it is just a fact. Like that's a statistic that's based on actual help seeking behaviors as evidenced by seeking formal therapy or
Mm-hmm.
seeking treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some forms of depression do not require formal treatment. Okay, so if you do not have clinical depression, you do not necessarily you don't have medical necessity for treatment.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know somebody has clinical depression? You probably don't. So there's the problem right there. Is that clinical depression looks like sadness sometimes, and it looks like plain depression, which I call it vanilla depression, where you're gonna be fine. You just need
Mm-hmm.
to live it. But how do you know? You can't really tell unless you go to see somebody
Mm-hmm.
and they do a full battery of tests. They do a full psychosocial. They find out if there's any medical conditions that could be mimicking. I mean, there's you have to figure everything out. Easy example is diabetes, lupus, MS. All of those
Mm-hmm.
mimic depression, and specifically with MS, there's some medications for the MS that cause the brain to experience an actual clinical episode of depression. Right. So whether or not it's actually factual that these women are experiencing clinical depression is questionable.
Mm-hmm.
And two, there are epigenetic factors that are, to me, conjoined twins,
Mm-hmm.
meaning helping and hurting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One of them is that I haven't looked at any recent studies. I'm gonna make myself a note here to see if there's maybe some out there. But there are studies that show the inheritance of experience. So in epigenetic studies, we see, for example, Holocaust survivors, children's children experiencing traumatic symptoms as if they've actually been through the Holocaust themselves. They did not. And it seems to be inherited by the father's sperm. So your grandfather's
Mm-hmm.
experience, you're inheriting through your DNA.
Right.
And there was a study on this group of men who survived a famine. And those survivors of the famine then reproduced offspring who had DNA changes to help them survive a famine. But they didn't experience a famine though. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so there's some social inheritance of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what group of black women you know on this here earth, on this here earth anywhere, who were given the luxury of having a day off when they were experiencing clinical depression? That number would be right there at zero.
It's like, well,
So,
unless they're on some far island that I'm not aware of.
so I sometimes talk about this in therapy that you are the strongest of your ancestors because
Mm-hmm.
you've inherited the strength and weakness. And you, so even for me this year, this is my year to become as consciously aware as I can of just my mother. Like I'll pick my grandmother maybe another year or my great, but just this year is of my mother, the things that I inherited that were strengths and weaknesses. So if
Mm-hmm.
we talk about depression, we're really talking about neurogenesis, the brain cell reproduction, and more specifically of baby neurons. So one of the factors is the epigenetics. What did this woman inherit? Well, if she's a black woman, she inherited from at least two generations back,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that generation was exposed to. Right. You see what I'm going? Right. She inherited their strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm. And considering the history of Black America, we all know what we experienced.
Yeah. So that would be like, well, why would she engage in help seeking behavior? Because she probably, you don't need to. She might not need to
Right.
until she reaches a certain threshold of clinical depression to where there is no other option except to engage in help seeking behavior,
Mm-hmm.
because we are living in this world
Mm-hmm.
versus the world our great great grandparents lived in, where you would survive a day versus live a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, you got to live a day. You got to actually get in your car, drive. You
Mm-hmm.
got to navigate the world in a different way. You're actually using different parts of your brain than your great grandparents had to use. And they had some other things that help them that don't help you. One of them being farm worker, agricultural worker, working outside. Those
Mm-hmm.
things actually help your brain to be more cushioned, which is no big jump to see where, well, what happens when you work out outside versus inside, where your brain responds more quickly. We can measure those things. And some of it is just the way the body's made up.
Mm-hmm.
So, factor, epigenetics. Another one that I personally see, like in my everyday practice, has to do with accessibility. I didn't see this until I was doing this part of the work, but in the same company, you could have people who are in upper level management having access to different kinds of benefits than people in lower positions. So
Hmm.
you have to use an easy example, a person who is in mid level management, they have access to benefits, but not access to time off to use those benefits.
Right.
Okay. Then we go up the food chain a little bit further, and the person has more flexibility. They have both their benefits and the flexibility to use those benefits. And this is actually what I physically see, is that
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is in the C suites, they can just decide, I'm not coming in until 12.
Right.
Who gonna check me, boo?
Whereas if I'm an individual contributor, I say I'm not coming in at 12. They're like, who told you could do that?
Who told you you could do that? You got to ask permission from like 50 people. You got to get blood in your firstborn. You got to fill out about 5,000 pages of paperwork, and then it'll take
Document it.
12 years, right? So, or up in the C-suite, I won't be in.
And nobody questions it.
Who's gonna question? Right. Right. So that's one of the things I see, and then I want you to think about the corporate world we know of as far as the statistics go. How many? How many of the same people you just described? How many of them are in those C-suites? Right.
Yeah.
So within the world of work, we
Mm-hmm.
still have an overload of people who are down versus up. And
Mm-hmm.
so my experience as a practitioner is the further down the person is on that food chain, even if they technically have access to the same benefits, they do not have access to flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if they are a wage earner, not salaried, even when they use those benefits, they have to their detriment an economic hardship because they now have time off the check immediately. Right.
Yeah.
Plus an increased cost because you have to pay a copay. Now, here's
Mm-hmm.
something crazy. The further up their food chain, I don't think people know they're not paying for therapy. Like they have so many reimbursements and luxuries of cost coverage that they're not actually usually actually paying for therapy. Even if the therapy session is $200, they're able to get reimbursed. I mean, it's ridiculous. So a lot of it has to do with negotiating benefits. Like when people get a really high level job, they negotiate all their benefits.
Really? That's something I learned today. That's
Well, here
making me
we are.
question.
So I'm saying, some of it is them saying, here are the statistics. And I'm like, well, okay, here's the lived experience of it. When I
Mm-hmm.
see people, and I see everybody, I tell everybody that I see everybody, all walks of life, all walks of life. I see the people who are developers and the people who are homeless. The people who are developers can come see me when they feel like it,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. They may actually pay for a session, but they have some way of reimbursing themselves for the session, costing it out. I mean, they're not quite experiencing the financial cost of the session the same as somebody else. And then they have the luck. So there's a sweet spot to therapy that I don't think therapists talk a lot about, but I notice it a lot. And when I
Mm-hmm.
find it, I try to protect it. Like I have people that we can't do no morning appointment. We cannot do a morning appointment. I have some we can't do an afternoon appointment. We can't do it during the week. I mean, just noticing that sweet spot where there's a time of day, a day of the week that you just are in your flow, and it's just, just this rush of content just comes together and you just get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have that flexibility, you can pick a time that works for you,
Right.
that not this just conveniently open on your calendar or that your manager would let you off on. I don't know how
Right.
many times I've heard that, oh, I can't get off work on such and such a day because that's one of our busier days. And I'm like, well, that is like that time of day at 2, for whatever reason, is
It's
when that
ideal
person,
for you.
yeah, well, and they have to ask permission, to be off at a certain time. Well, that's going to happen in a lot of jobs where a lot of Black people are represented. And we have plenty of corporate statistics to look at to help us see that we're not overly represented at the upper levels. And the further up you go, the more flexibility you have over your own. You're not asking permission.
Right.
So that's one. The other third factor is just the human unfortunate factor. Most mood disorders sneak up on you without announcing themselves from miles away. So you find yourself in trouble
Hmm.
versus if you had the flu
You
or
feel
something
the
like that,
symptoms. Yeah.
you gonna have symptoms, and the first you're like, oh my God, I hope I don't have a flu. And then you start thinking back, who was that around? And then you're like, well, let
Hmm.
me see. You start checking on your symptoms and you're trying to take care of them, but you already in your mind, like, I think this is the flu.
Right. Right.
You kind of prepare your world for, I think I got the flu. Let me just, you start adjusting. Well,
Right.
with mood disorders, again, unless you are going for, not recommend an annual checkup for anybody. Go get an annual checkup for, here are a couple of reasons, just as an aside. That practitioner is kind of build history with you and
Right.
can more quickly notice that this is not normal for you. If you're going to somebody new, they don't have history, they don't
Right.
know, and catching somebody up on your whole life history,
And it's 15, 20 minutes is not like,
it's not good. Right. So you really need history. And then two, even with history, we have to allow you to connect with us. We got to connect with you. And so the course of figuring out what's wrong can
hmm
easily take 2 months to be quite accurate.
hmm
It's just as somebody's in pain does not mean they have a mood disorder.
hmm
It may mean that you don't need to work at that job no more. Or maybe the relationship really is over. Or your bad
yeah.
kids, they not responding to gentle parenting. I mean, I'm just saying it could be environmental stressors.
Right.
And right, or acute stress. And acute stress only responds to problem solving. So you come into therapy every week and it's steadily getting worse. It's not that therapy wasn't working, it's that had to be solved for you to feel
Right.
better, and until you solve it, you're just gonna feel worse and worse and worse.
It's like ruminate on the same thing over and over again. It's
Over
like
and
no
over,
matter how
right?
much you throw at it, it's still going to the
Yeah,
culprit is not
right,
rectified at that point.
right. So that's the third factor. That's the third factor. That's my experience with why that might. Well, that is true. What you said is true. It's just that the picture behind it on why it's true. Those are my experiences.
And that makes perfect sense. That's why I asked because you could look at the statistics and say, okay, well, Black women in my community don't want to go to therapy or don't believe in therapy, then or they don't want to go seek the help. Because another thing that I talked about before, and I spoke to my medical doctor,
Mhm.
Dr. Cujo, about this, was I noticed that there's a lot of distrust when it comes to, and I even spoke to another therapist on about this, about, well, if I go to the doctor and I tell them this, then they're going to automatically hold against my will. But also
Mhm.
too, having cultural competence is something that I advocate and I want to know more and have the patients, our clients, advocate for themselves to find the right fit for them, because I feel like that's a huge um, not taken lightly when they're making a decision on their providers and having
It's
that
a
cultural
hard one. Oh,
competence.
Chris, that's the hardest one to me because you do need to see somebody where you're not going to have to explain your culture,
Hmm.
you know, on the one hand, but then you need a competent scientist. So, like life coaching, I use that as an easy example. Life coaching is perfect for acute stress
Hmm.
because a good life coach is going to make you solve your problem, going to make you address them,
Right.
solve your pain until you do. But what if it's acute? What if it's a complexity with the acute stress?
Hmm.
Right? So now, like, part of why you're not solving the problem might be because you're in not a high level of major clinical depression, but you're on your way. So you're
Hmm.
right there at this unfortunate window where you're still washing your butt, you're still brushing your teeth, but your prefrontal cortex function is already starting to take a dive. And
Right.
so you look fine,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not. You're not. And
Mm-hmm.
so this life coach is actually right spot on in focusing on the acute stress and trying to get you to engage in goal setting and problem solving and motivation and being. But if your brain is actually experiencing an
Yeah.
event, that ain't, it was never gonna work. So it can look like life coaching is not working or like y'all are not a good fit or something like that. My advice is just get a checkup. I mean, for most of us now,
Mm-hmm.
we have a competent scientist. That's maybe one visit, two visits, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We want visit two visits to at least screen and see what could be going on. So a
Right.
lot of what could be happening, we can give you a quick yes or no. Sort of like going into an urgent care center and getting a COVID test now, where we can give you a yes or no on this COVID, but now we're like, but why do I have this cough? Like,
So now you got to go for a whole
now you
battery
got
test.
right now we gotta go. And then finally somebody says, okay, are you allergic to anything? No, I don't think I have any allergies. I've never been allergic to anything. And I'm gonna speak from personal experience. I didn't know I was allergic to cats because I
Mm-hmm.
never had been, as far as I knew, allergic to cats. But then when I went to the doctor, I realized I haven't really been around cats either. So
Yeah.
I had been helping take care of our neighbors' cats while they were out of town. And I was completely miserable. My everything. I was like, something's wrong with me. I mean, this is like I can't even breathe. I didn't know I was having an allergic reaction. And anybody who's had an actual like allergic reaction, like you can't think, you kind of become touch me not. I
Yeah.
mean, it bothers you, right? And I
Right.
didn't know. So I'm using that as an easy example of a
Mm-hmm.
medical issue that wasn't necessarily life threatening, but every day I was going back over to their house and re-exposing myself
And
without
then,
realizing it.
yeah.
Yeah, so then I just stopped going over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a medical issue. So this is anybody listening. The first thing you can do if you're not sure
Mm-hmm.
is start with the least level of care.
Okay.
Least level of care is self-help. So listening to like podcasts like this, reading books, going to seminars, going to workshops, actually look on the internet, see what you self-help.
Mm-hmm.
Monitor your sleep. That's the easiest thing. If your sleep is fine,
Mm-hmm.
then you either are still in a good window to go get some actual help,
Mm-hmm.
or it ain't actually nothing wrong with you as far as a clinical issue. There may be some acute stress
Mm-hmm.
or might be just in a bad situation, but possibly there's not an actual clinical event happening. If you're falling asleep within 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
staying asleep through a normal sleep cycle, meaning about 7.5 to 8 hours, and going through your sleep cycles during that time and waking up feeling refreshed. Well,
Mm-hmm.
welcome to our world of technology. These lovely watches will tell you if you have or have not. You don't have to guess anymore. So just
Mm-hmm.
turn the feature on and see, have I been sleeping well? And if you have been sleeping well, that level of care, that least level of care, self help, you could try that. But I don't recommend people stay in life coaching or self help for longer than 6 months.
Okay.
After about 6 months, you should either see things like really, you're in a new rhythm, you're improved, things are going well, or it should be like you're actually done and now you're just like growing. You're
Mm-hmm.
continuing to do it, but just because you want to grow. You
Mm-hmm.
should not still be actually working so hard to get things going. And there's some science behind the 6 months. After 6 months, you could pair first. I don't recommend stopping the self help. Just add therapy,
Mm-hmm.
regular plain old. Somebody like plain old, just go see a therapist. You need to go. The whole world, just go see a therapist and tell them I've been trying this for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I was trying to fix. It's not fixed, and I want to know if you can help because when you guys tell us those things, there's all these different equations that we know as scientists to put together, and
Mm-hmm.
it helps us to figure out, well, maybe we should start here, or maybe we should start there, but it does
Mm-hmm.
give us a starting point. So that's what I would say. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, it does. Now you mentioned self help, self care. What are your go to, any client of yours knows that you're going to recommend or tell me to track my sleep. But outside of that, what else would you recommend for someone
Yeah.
to
Well,
manage their mental
everybody
health?
knows about the sleep because that's just an easy, low level place for us to start. It also just can't go unaddressed because anything else we do is just gonna keep getting torn up if we don't
Mm-hmm.
fix the sleep. But a long time ago, one of my clients said, you should tell people that after they fix their sleep and they get all the way, that this is when it actually gets harder. And that's true. So here are the other things that I recommend people do. There's an acronym in most 12-step programs called HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And to take yourself to like another level of self-help is to pay attention to those states.
Mm-hmm.
Hunger, anger, loneliness, tired. And by hunger, I mean not just food, but hunger for any particular thing, like
Mm-hmm.
substances, gambling, sex, paying attention to feeling hungry for things. Anger, paying attention to, am I like low key angry all day long? It just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the bear that people are poking all day, like paying attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
Loneliness is easy to happen because of our first world community. You
Mm-hmm.
could live your life in full isolation, days on end. They would
Yeah.
deliver your groceries to you.
Yeah,
You
it's like after COVID, it makes it that much easier to just be at home. I say if I didn't
literally
have kids, I would literally be a hermit in this house, except for
easy.
days like today when it's nice and warm and I want to go out and experience it
Yeah,
before it gets too hot.
yeah.
But
So
it's so easy
connecting
to.
with people is
Mhm.
something that requires effort. You could be married and lonely. You have to make sure that you pay attention to loneliness. It is deadly, and I'm not making it out like some emotional exaggeration. It actually is deadly. Your T cell function goes down. You tend to have a lower level of brain activity, increases your risk long term of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Loneliness, right? On the opposite side, connecting with other people actually is healing for your body, not just
Mm.
R&B slow song healing, but genuinely. When we love somebody, and they connect with us, we release oxytocin.
Mhm.
Oxytocin binds to our heart and heals the adverse effects of stress. We tend to smile more when we're interacting with somebody that we care about. The actual physical act of your face smiling helps your body relieve stress.
Mhm.
So connecting is healthy for more reasons than one. And so paying attention to it, you have to, because it's the one thing out of all of your mental and emotional health.
Mhm.
There's no medicine for loneliness.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's the
Yeah.
only thing you can do is connect
Right. Yes. The only
and
thing
figure out a way to connect.
figure out a way to connect. Exactly. Exactly. The only thing
Mhm.
you can do is
Mhm.
connect. And you've got to figure out a way to connect. Like
And
you have
even like now, how we're I mean, they make it so, like I said, post COVID, I'm sure all these softwares and iPhones, you can just FaceTime. I find it when I haven't talked to a friend in a while, hey, I'm going to FaceTime you while well, instead of talking on the phone, let's FaceTime so I could see your face. I could see your smile. And
mm-hmm.
that does help.
It helps. So like you said, you have to actively make the connection happen. That's the
Yeah.
one thing. Yep. And the other one is tired, like when you're just physically tired, but y'all already doing a sleep chart. Everybody who's working with me knows that's been there forever. The sleep, but it comes from working at St. Paul Medical Center,
Hmm.
working the ER, and learning as an intern, a very very young intern, that lack of sleep is admissible. Like if you have not slept, like it was a quick shortcut for me. Like it's so many years that I can't get in trouble, but I don't know why. But if I was doing an assessment, the first thing I would ask was like, how, when was the last time you had a good night's sleep? And people will often say, I have not slept in 2 days. I haven't slept in 3 days.
Hmm.
And then I wouldn't have to finish the intake because we're through. You can be admitted right now because it's admissible. So I don't need to go into all the rest of the history and
Yeah.
all that. They have not slept in 24, 48 hours. And you're going to get admitted you can just get admitted to a med unit just to go to sleep. And that's all they're going to do is put you to sleep
Hmm.
and
That's
then
true.
possibly do a site consult. But my work is done. I can go to the next patient. So having learned that though, and of course you learn why and all that kind of stuff, but if you don't fix it, nothing else is going to work and it has to be fixed. So when you're tired, and you're noticing that this job I'm having, it makes me work all these hours, and by the time I get home, that it's just cyclical, then you got to fix it. You got to just say, I don't know why my battery's not charging. I'm sorry, because it's not plugged in. You got to make yourself say, I have to do this. So two of them are I have to do. Loneliness, you have to fix. Tiredness, there's some medical support for it, but you're gonna have to do something. It's not an option. Anger, there's so many different reasons why a person might be experiencing anger. So if you're doing self-help, paying attention to those 4 states, if those are fine, your self-help is actually self-growth. You're going helping yourself to growing
and growing and evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a question as you were talking about tiredness, and you're using that in the perspective of working.
Yes.
How does tiredness look different than being burnout?
So remember, I said I try to not do what I don't want to do, and only do what I want to do, and I take responsibility for fixing that as I go. Well, sometimes I wanted to at first, and I changed my mind. So some of that is the power to change your mind, the power to feel like you can. Whole different black man to thank for that. 2 different ones: my father and my grandfather, Cal Cockle. He's gone on, and my father still good. They both, they both helped me feel very come by changing my mind to some degree from like spoiling me a little bit. Like, what do you want? And I changed my mind. Well, they, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
My husband, they're with our girls. Like, it's aggravating, but I get the whole point. It's very aggravating. I'm like, he don't really mean that at Baskin and Robbins. He talking about over life issues. But the feeling of when your day is going by and you feel like this pressure, this obligation, check in, because sometimes it's responsibility. And you owe discipline to your life. It's not no leprechaun state. You can't just expect the fairies to fix stuff. Well, there's some discipline that comes to having an enjoyable day. But then it can go too far. And for each person, that's where life coaching or self-help or talking to a therapist can be excruciatingly difficult but helpful. Your conscious mind is slow. Your genetics are the fastest thing, but between genetics and the conscious mind is the subconscious. And whenever you're having you're listening to a podcast, you're giving your subconscious and your conscious mind some content to kind of put some things together, some answers. Or you are at church. That's an easy one. You're sitting still at church. You're thinking. You're putting things together. And so some people are like, I just feel so much better when I go to church. I'm like, if you sat still and journaled and was listening to a really helpful podcast, you might have the same aha moments. Or you can pick this up and go to church. But then with burnout, the joy is replaced with anhedonia, which we call, lack of pleasure, where this should feel good and it doesn't, or it used to feel good and it doesn't. I encourage everybody to take burnout seriously because of the anhedonia. Anhedonia is one of the most difficult symptoms in clinical depression to get managed out. It is extremely difficult. So avoiding it is what I actually try to not have it happen, right? But let's say that you are starting to feel burnout. You don't want to do something. You're starting to try to avoid going. You're late to everything. You turn the stuff in late. You don't care. You half-ass. You just really, you don't want to do it anymore. And you're like, I think I just don't want to do this anymore. I say first, see what you do like about it. And then possibly impose your will on the situation and bend it to your pleasure.
Okay.
First, try to start there. I'll be transparent. SMU is a long drive from where I am, and it has always been a long drive. But when I first started, I enjoyed the drive. I would talk to my grandmother. I would talk to her pretty much the whole drive. That's when I would talk to her on the phone. And the truth is, she passed away. She passed away, and that drive was not really as enjoyable anymore. Like I would call my old college roommate sometimes, or I would call a friend, but it was not
the same. Right.
I used to look forward to that drive because I'm going to drive the whole way talking to her. And then on the way back, I would just listen to all my ratchet music. Uninterrupted. I ain't got no kids in the car, so I enjoyed the drive. But then she would, I couldn't call her and talk. So when COVID happened, I got some relief from the drive and I never went back to it. I was like, I don't really look forward to that drive anymore. I do like the work that I do. And there's some things that I miss about being on the campus, but not enough to make me want to drive up
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
So I encourage that kind of reflection, but I took the responsibility of saying to them, so do I have to come back on campus after
Mhm.
COVID? And they were like, well, we would like for you to, but you have a choice. And I said, oh, so I don't need, I get to choose. Oh, absolutely. You know, so that was my example of if I feel like I don't never I want to know I feel like had I made myself go, I
Mhm.
probably would have burned out. I probably would have burned out.
Mhm.
Now I enjoy it. My schedule is my other like living example of it. I'm about to change my schedule once again. I change my schedule all the time. I give myself a day off. I take off mornings. I really play a lot with my schedule. My two kids are completely different in almost
Mhm.
every way. I moved my office to be closer to my youngest daughter.
Mhm.
So that was what really happened. That's what happened with the Farmers Branch office. Is I missed the Thanksgiving feast at my youngest daughter's daycare. She was hurt behind it, and I promised her
Aw.
it would never happen again. That was at Thanksgiving. And if anybody, it was December. I was gone. I moved. I had started moving over to Frisco, and I signed the lease as soon as they gave me the office I wanted, which was the
Mhm.
one facing her playground. So
Aw.
I moved into an office facing her playground because I'm like, I'm not gonna this that's why I told her it would never happen again. And then I thought, well, there's no way for me to make sure that never happens again because we live in Dallas, unless I'm literally like right by you. And there
Mhm.
weren't any offices near her old school. So I moved her school and I moved me so that we were on the same parking lot with each other. So in the morning I would park, she would walk me up to my office, I would drop off my laptop and everything, and then we would get on the elevator, walk out the door and walk across the parking lot to her school. And then anytime they had anything from that point forward, I would look on the camera and see that they started yet, or look out my window and see that they started yet. And then I would just go down, yay, clap for her, all right, and get go back
Go
to
back to
work.
work.
Go back to work. Well, now I work entirely from home, so when she has something, I go. My oldest did not care, still don't care. I mean, she don't care. She
Mhm.
graduated and she don't care. We were like, so what do you want us to do for graduation? She was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
She don't care.
Just
Right. We're planning the whole family trip. And I was like, so everybody, she was like, well, I mean, I don't get so many tickets for graduation. I guess y'all can. I'm like, you don't care. And she's like, not
I
really.
guess I can.
We plan to make a whole family trip and go to New York for the weekend, go see a Broadway show. She was like, well, I was just going to kick it with my friends. I'm like, do you even care if we come? I honestly don't even think she cares. Her diploma will be here this week. I
Mhm.
told my husband, after she get that diploma, she might not even want to go to her own graduation. She's just different, totally
Yeah.
different. The other one,
She wants you there front and center for all of the things.
she's a kid. So, but I would not be okay. So, as an example, burnout different from when you just need a break or you're tired. With her, I would have gotten burned out from being in the office if it had meant missing time
With her.
from her all like not just randomly but all the time. And
Mhm.
so I took it serious enough to move. But I haven't mentioned a secret. And I know we're like at the end of the whole thing.
Mhm.
So my big secret, like how does this all really, 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 really work? And I don't know if this is really a faith based podcast so much, but
Yeah, yeah.
so this, I mean, God has really been kind to me my
Mhm.
whole career. He protects my practice and keeps us safe in every way, physically and financially.
Mhm.
Um, at one point, I had an office in Louisville.
Mhm.
The whole building was broken into, and all of the offices were vandalized except mine.
Oh, wow. That's a testimony in itself.
Right. The next morning, the therapist who was working for me at the time, her name was Norma, she called. She said, I don't know if anybody's called you, but somebody broke into this building and they have trashed the entire place. Dr. Richard's office was right next to mine. She's like, her office got vandalized. the office right across from us, Dr. Lisa Pierce's office, had got bent. And I was like, how did they even break in her door without having their back up against our door? Because this is a C-class building. This is a little small hallway. She was like, I don't know. She's like, and just to be honest with you, it does look a little suspect. I mean, nothing was touched, not your door, nothing was touched.
It would look like you went through and
I was like, well, I just am thankful for God protecting. So that's what I mean by he's literally physically protected, but then he's also protected in ways that I could not have known and didn't know about, and he was just there. So over a decade ago, this couple had been coming to see me, and I don't use client anecdotes in any of my talks. I never actually talk about clients' work, except this one. Because this person filed a case against me with the state of Texas, which made all his records available to the whole world anyway. And out of all people I've ever worked for, when I saw it, I was like, I definitely, if I was you, wouldn't have did that. Because now the whole world can see all your business. And I was
yeah.
so he was upset with me because I did not have on a skirt. And he said, you said you were a Christian counselor. And I was like, well,
That
first,
doesn't have anything to.
I don't think I said that because I don't normally say that to people. I just let them bring it in to our
Mhm.
work. And if they bring it in, I stay very transparent and we do that work. But I just
Mhm.
said, okay, but I am. And he was like, women in my congregation do not wear pants. And I said, okay. And then he said that he didn't appreciate that I had charged him his copay. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to get your copay if I don't bill you? He said, but you bill my insurance. I said, right, because you only have a copay. So
Mhm.
I bill them. He was like, yes, but that's double dipping. I said, I don't even know what kind of math you doing. You're making a portion of a payment on a bill.
Right. You pay your portion, they pay their
And they
portion.
have to pay their portion. He reported that to the state of Texas. So they, of course, have to investigate whatever. Fast forward,
Mhm.
I ended up in Austin behind this.
Mhm.
And at the end, I said, I have to pray because I did nothing wrong, but I don't need this to somehow get messed up and it looks like I did something
Yeah.
wrong. I went to God about the whole thing and he just took care of me. He just told me to basically to calm down. I got this, there. And there was an attorney behind me waiting to go inside. He was extremely rude to me for no reason. And
Mhm.
it hurt my feelings to the core, but I could hear God telling me to ignore him, face forward. And anybody knows me knows that I do not ignore, I do not say, you come forward, I'm gonna give it to you. And I made myself listen and do what God was asking me to do. I get in, I sit down, I've said nothing to this man. I get in, I sit down, all of a sudden I feel this little tap on my shoulder. Apologize. Okay. Then they go up to the docket, and the lady says, I know that she was here, and I know that she was here. The rest of them. And I was like, I'm up first. Okay.
Mhm.
So then I get up, and the investigator says, I have absolutely nothing to say. This man didn't want to make his copay, and that is why he has you know. And so, and right, everybody was like, his copay, right? So then they were like, well, is he here today? No, of course he ain't there. So then they were like, well, you're actually, this is completely dismissed.
Mhm.
Um, if you don't mind, we would like to use this as a teachable moment for the students who are here in the court today. And then they
Oh,
use
that's
my
awesome.
case as an example of what you're supposed to do. They were like, you see, she had to come here and answer for this, even though it was obviously going to be dismissed. She
Mhm.
still came. She should definitely do that. Everything I had did, they were like, these are examples of what you should do. So I felt completely validated and vindicated.
Mhm.
And then because if anybody, your insurance covers this, if you get accused and you win, your insurance covers. So we had us a nice free trip to Austin. We were in and out in the morning, and we just enjoyed the rest of the day in Austin. And that has been the signature of my career. God has never ever failed to intervene, ever,
Mhm.
ever,
And
ever,
that's
ever.
because you just surrender and trust his plan, or do
No,
you?
I feel sometimes like, and I'll try to say this without crying. I feel sometimes because he is kind to me that I'm really benefiting from my grandmother's mother's prayers.
Hmm.
My grandmother's mother went into a burning building, a home, their home, to get her out when she was a baby. My grandmother fell off of a wagon and was told she would not be able to bear children. And in response to that, she prayed and asked God to bless her generations. And I'm like, so you 12 and you tell God, I know they said I can't have no kids, but I'm gonna need you to bless my generations. So she went, obviously,
Her
I'm here.
prayers.
So yeah. And while she was alive, she would tell me all the time, about different things that had happened. And then what she did, she would listen to God. My uncle, Bay, had a injury to his eye. And she said she heard God on what to do. And when they got him to the doctor said, how did you know what to do? And she said, God told me what to do. And I did what he said. And when she died, I had a dream and I knew what was happening. And when I went to see her, I acknowledged the dream that I had. And she said, yeah, it's time. And when she passed, I went to God and I asked him to make me come to him because I knew I would not be able to do this anymore. Like you're talking about burnout, I was like, I will not be able to be a therapist anymore because I won't care. And so much of what we do involves like tons of research, preparing for each case. Like you got to stay in the know,
Hmm.
the energy to do that. I was like, I won't care. I won't make sure somebody stays alive. Like I'll be like, if you gonna do it, like. So I said, yeah, make me come to you, and he did. He made me come to him. Made me. I asked him to multiply my obedience, rebuke me from me, because I said this pain will take me out. You know.
I needed to hear that today.
And then I said, she was not a wealthy woman. But I heard God say, oh, I said, I want to inherit her glory. He said, that wasn't her glory, that was mine. And you can have it. And so I said, okay, I want to inherit you. The glory that you gave her, I want to inherit that. And he has been, my husband's my best living witness because everything behind closed doors, he know my whole, all of it. But when I say intervene, I don't have anything but a life full of stories about that. And I always thought my story started with my birth. But with God showing me, like, no, she wasn't even supposed to have kids.
I know that's a story in itself.
Yeah. And then your grandmother's mother was just that kind of woman. She came in from the field, saw the house on fire, and went in and got her baby. I'm like, I inherited that. That is literally who I am. So when I
Hmm.
say to people, sitting in, like, giving yourself a minute for all of it to connect, your genetics, your subconscious, and your consciousness, so that it can all connect. It helps you better understand who you are, and who
That's
you're not.
awesome.
But that's what that is. So that's the God part of all of
That I learned something. I mean, I always learn something when I talk to you. I'm always enlightened,
it. Yeah.
and I always enjoy our conversations. But I mean, that right there, I'm gonna have to take on that and chew on that for a little bit and see how I can apply that to me.
Hmm.
Because being very transparent to you, and you've known me for years.
Hmm.
How I've kind of, I have my, no, I'm not doing that. This right here, this podcast is one of the things I had a dream about, and I woke up. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not telling people my business. I'm not telling people my story. I'm not being that vulnerable. I told him all the stuff I wasn't going to do,
Yeah, here
and
you
he
are.
probably looked at me like I look at my kids, like, who is she think she's talking to? But
Yeah.
the beautiful thing is, I've had some. I'm blown away by the people that come, and I just had a guest here who I've known for years, and he told me some things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why he asked me to have you come on. Or I hear stories, and like I say, it's healing through telling stories. And I always want to bring the perspective of people that have the tools that may be able to help and reach out, because I'm realizing that it's more than just my story. I'm here to tell the stories or reach out to people that may not feel like they have someone. And
Yes.
so me telling him no, or me saying, oh, nope, I'm not going to write that book. I'm not going to do this. I am not going to be talking in front of a bunch of people. And I've done it, and it's like, this is not my natural personality. My natural personality is to kind of sit back and observe and have my
Mhm.
thoughts or write my things. But he told me, no, this is what I want you to do. So here I am.
Obedience, yeah, obedience. It doesn't work out anyway. You end up having to do it anyway. I mean,
He said, either I can twist your arm and you can do it this
yeah,
way, or you just gonna sit back and
yeah. This could be a Jonah situation if you want to. I mean, that's how he does it. So I don't know. It's like, who are you telling no? You can tell me no, and I just
yeah.
gotta hold my head down and accept it. But okay, I think it's like you said. He was like, "So I don't know who you think you're talking to." Okay,
So I got to tell everybody I came here kicking and screaming because I was just like, I just do not want to do this. It was just too intimidating to do this. But at the end of the day, when I leave every conversation that I have here, I feel more connected and
hmm
understand how I'm honored how he used me as a vessel because, even when I did my live event, someone sitting next to me, she was like, I'm looking at the questions that you have, but the questions that you're asking and how you're hosting this panel is totally different. I said, because I'm sitting here and I let him use me and the questions that pop up, obviously somebody needs to know that answer. And I just ask them, or I'm just naturally curious.
yes, yeah. So you're letting it flow,
Yeah.
you know, as the spirit would lead. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, I was like, I have to have Dr. Thompson on because you were acknowledged. I didn't use your name because, I
Mhm.
just didn't at that time, but I was like, I have to tell the story of how I came from living with high functioning depression for over a decade because I was just too busy or too like, oh, this is normal for me. This is nothing that, until I physically saw it on the screen, like, wait a minute.
Mhm. No, I laugh about that time. Just as I had to tell you, I'm like, that day you about killed me. I was like, so all this time don't mean nothing until somebody show you pictures. But so you can normalize pictures work for everybody.
Oh,
Pictures.
really?
It was literally a study on like patient doctor
Hmm.
education, and
Hmm.
the result was that just show some pictures. Just show some pictures because people are not going to read the pamphlets. They don't remember what you said, but the pictures people remember.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and I'm like, oh my. And the funny thing is, I recorded myself randomly because I didn't record myself, but I recorded myself and I found that recording as I was preparing for one of my episodes. I'm like, how funny is it that 10 years ago or however many years ago that I went through this, I'm recording myself as I'm having the reaction. And here
Wow!
I am talking about that now.
Wow!
So
Wow!
I had just got out, I think, out of session with you. And I'm like, she just told me that if I don't do this, then I'm going to. And it wasn't, you weren't mean spirited about it. You weren't like, if you don't, you were very just honest.
Well, some people understand there's a level of care that does not work
Hmm.
and that does harm. So if you think about going to see your Girl Scout troop leader when you have a broken leg, because y'all out in the woods. Well, while y'all out in the woods on this trip, she gotta like, help you get to the bus and help you get
Hmm.
to the hospital. But that
Hmm.
is literally her job at that point is to help you get to the job, hopefully not damage it more, but get you to the
Right.
level of care that you need. That is her job right then. And sometimes that's my job is to get somebody from where we are to the level of care that they need. Plus, I know that there are things that work. And
Hmm.
that may be where the trust factor comes in, the scientists to the community, because I unfortunately have had practitioners where they don't trust the levels of care and they don't have facilities that they feel like they can send people to, or they don't
Hmm.
have doctors that they work with. And I've been fortunate to have a lot of doctors that work well with me, facilities. My husband works at a facility, so I am familiar with what place to not send you to.
Yeah, because I remember you telling me that, like, don't go here, go here.
Go right. So I could say from like behind closed doors, sometimes I notice that among my community. But what my very close friends and I do, we text each other. I'm like, I'm about to send somebody over such as what you think? Should we go there? It was go. Like, because I mean, seriously, sometimes this is somebody's out on vacation. I cannot make that up. But like over at Carrollton Springs, there's a tech there that if he's not there, it is chaos. So
Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
like, is somebody at work right now? But okay, never mind. I mean, where should I go? So that inner community, having people that I know to call and text, that's been helpful to me too. My
Mhm.
whole career. Yes, y'all have benefited from my little tiny network.
I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I feel like this will be very helpful for someone listening. If someone listening were to want to get in contact with you or follow you on social media, how would they be able to do that? And of course, everything you share, I'll put it in
Yes.
the notes too.
You can go to the website, Dr. Monique Thompson, with an H and with a P, so THOMPSON, drmoniquethompson.com. And that'll link you to the little bit of social media that I have, which is
Hmm.
Facebook. And occasionally I make an Instagram post.
Hmm.
But if you're on Facebook, just look up Monique Thompson LPC, and you can find me on Facebook. The main
Okay.
office number, I'll put that in. The main office number is 972-820-9965, and there is a human being that will answer the phone.
Okay. And then I guess you'll share me the link. I mean, with the small window of time that they have to reach out to you regarding scholarship, like thanks to your
Yes, let's see.
nonprofit.
The Zero Debt College Project Facebook group is where I recommend. You need to start with it pre-K. So as you heard me talking about my daughter, 15 minutes a day of math. Pre-K through eighth grade, they need 15 minutes a day of math. It is so scholarship related, in that the brain itself goes through changes in puberty that make you have a slowing down of this activity. And next thing you know, those test scores look like muddy water. But if you can go into your middle school years ahead, a grade or two ahead in math, then you're going to have slippage, but you'll still be ahead.
Hmm.
So then it's time to test. You're going to do fine. You do career related community service projects versus just doing service. And that way
Hmm.
you explore your career, figure out, oh, I don't want to be a veterinarian. Even though I thought I did, I don't want to be one. I do want to be in medicine. So then you do another career related community service project and you realize, I want to be the kind of person in medicine that makes sure people get their benefits. I don't actually want to do patient care. So then
Hmm.
you do your next career related community service project and you go, oh, I found my home.
Hmm.
Well, all along the way, you're giving back to the community. The community
Hmm.
has benefited, but you have benefited as well.
Right.
That's your little kid doing community service, but
Hmm.
doing it to explore their career. So we have a little girl right now. She did hers this past summer. She was interested. I was like, just have her collect books of a certain kind. You know, so sometimes it's as simple as don't do a book drive, do a specific kind of book drive.
Hmm.
You know, so
Hmm.
that's what I recommend parents do: is get involved in the Facebook group. But if you have a little kid, help them do service, but career related community service. And if they are older, if they're older, like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, then it is time to get scholarships. They can get scholarships, and they can get those through a lot of different ways. But jumping into the Facebook group is a way to get started.
Okay, that's a lot of information. I can use that because my daughter is fifth grade and getting ready to go in sixth grade. So
Career related,
yeah.
whatever she's interested in, help her come up with
Hmm.
the project, but
Hmm.
make sure she's able to explore her career. She'll meet people
Hmm.
in her career field, and they'll tell. Like my daughter's interested in culinary. We didn't know some of the things that she needed to know until she talked with them. She was working on her community service project, which was to have cake at this little rally that they do at the lake. And the guy was like, "Well, you can get your cottage license right now." And I'm like, "What is a cottage license?" And he
Yeah.
was
What
like,
is that?
yeah, he was like, you just go online and pay like $5 and you pass the test and you can have your cottage license so she can sell baked goods out of the house. And I was
Oh,
like, are
really?
you serious? That's right. So I went online. He was like, yeah. And then he was able to tell her, you need to start doing things like this because if you own your own restaurant, it's all day and all night. And if you find at your age that you don't like cooking and baking and doing that kind of stuff all day and all night, you won't waste time in culinary school going to try to be a chef owning your own restaurant only to learn I don't
You
like
like
being
it?
here all day and all night. And that was what she learned. This was last year.
Hmm.
After she did that project, and I was like, you don't want to do this because you don't want to be up all night and actually
Cooking. Yeah.
you don't do it. She went to a sleepover. I was like, you can't go to the sleepover to do. She was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do. I was like, I don't think you do either. But she was only 10 and learning
Hmm.
that. Right.
Hmm.
So now she's doing another one. The project this summer that she wants to do is to combine her interest in art and music with culinary. So she's doing a musical.
Hmm.
Her musical is to educate people about culinary. And I was like, yeah,
Oh,
right. So she'll do a community service project. It'll help her explore. I know my child. The issue is going to be the follow through. So she so part of what you learn is, am I a leader or am I somebody that's supposed to be part of a team? Or am
Hmm.
I really an entrepreneur? Or am I somebody who doesn't even really want to work? I want to own property. So, just whatever you'll find that out.
Hmm.
So that's what she's gonna learn in the summer. Yeah.
That's good. That's also helpful to me because my daughter also expressed interest in being a chef or baker, and that's one of the things she just got for her birthday was her own little baking kit, and so I'm gonna definitely have to find things related to that this
Well, and
summer.
where she's interacting with somebody who is doing it.
Okay.
Because just doing the service won't tell her anything about the
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm.
But having to interact with somebody who is doing it for a living,
Hmm.
they have information to share where they're like, well, this like you didn't know about the college. How would I know? I don't do that for a
Yeah,
living.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Right. Somebody in the field, when students come to me and they say, I want to be a counselor one day, the first thing I ask them is, where do you want to live? Where do you think you want to live? Do you feel like you want to live in the South, the North, the East, or the West? Because you have to get licensed. So wherever you go to school, it needs to be in the vicinity of where you think you want to live. Because when you finish school, you have to then get licensed.
Hmm.
Most places, the academic requirements are going to be different in Virginia than from Texas to California. So if you don't want to have to go back to school, you need to think about that right now. So,
Hmm.
easy example, I'm not licensed in Arkansas. I'm from
Hmm.
Arkansas.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would want to get licensed in Arkansas, I would have to go back to school. I have been practicing for 23 years, teaching
Yeah.
for 13, at SMU for 21. And I checked last year just to see, are y'all still crazy? And they were like, yes, you still. I'm like, I've been practicing for decades. I teach. Well, yes, but so some places have reciprocity, some do not. And in this
Mhm.
case, a place where
Arkansas.
yeah, Arkansas is one. California, Florida, some places, it depends. It just depends. So, and when you graduate, it may be different. So, anybody coming in my field, my first thing is for them to think about, where do you want to live?
Mhm.
It's an odd question, you think, for a therapist, like, well, where do you want to live? But that is actually the
Yeah,
truth.
because I mean, my first like, well, I'm not really sure yet, but that makes sense as to why you say that because depending
Mhm.
on where you live, it can depend on where you go to school.
Where you go to school and how you get licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if you ever get licensed.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate your time today. I think this has been really helpful, and I look forward to all of the good things that'll come from this. I
Same.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
No problem.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.